I'm not sure if I have the authority to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Is that all right? Just a real quick question. Is this the largest Sunday school class you've ever been to in the history of your life? Because I think it might be the largest Sunday school class that I have ever taught. I'm Nunnally, and I am hopefully a longtime friend of this church. Sort of like thank you, kind of like an old shoe that the dog keeps dragging up. And one of these times when I get here, I'm going to get it right, and they'll let us both off the hook. So this morning is not so much of a classic Bible study as it is a walk back through time for the last, say, 100 years. You think we can get in 45 minutes, we can do 100 years of history? Probably not, but we're going to try because that's what they told me to do, okay? So you get a lot of spin on television from both the left and the right because everybody has a dog in the race. Everybody has an opinion, an agenda that they're wanting to push. What I would like to do this morning is simply walk through the pages of about 100 years of Arab and Jewish conflict in the Middle East, and specifically within what we call now the borders of the modern state of Israel. Is that fair? All right, so what I'd like to do to start out with, and by the way, yes, my wife and I just got back from the war. We actually flew into it. It was a whole 3 hours old and 2,500 missiles already old when we landed in Tel Aviv. So we found ourselves in the middle of a war and did whatever that we could until we realized that the two groups we were going to be teaching hardcore Bible on-site in context, those groups were not able to come because their flights had been canceled. So we did what we could to help with the effort of refugees being evacuated from the south, from their own country, further north for safety. After the events of December the 7th, or rather October the 7th, if you slip through that, just go back and watch some newsreels and you'll get the full meal deal. That's really not what we're going to talk about this morning. I wanted to talk to you about the history of the Arab-Jewish conflict in the Middle East. So on the screen, you have a picture of that part of the world, and nestled in there is little tiny Israel that's in the red right there. Here and over here on the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. So you can kind of see that we're talking about, and this Israel that is there in the red, about only half of that is inhabited. The rest of it is steppe or desert, and so it's not really cultivatable by traditional means, and there are no major cities in places like the northern Sinai and the far south in the Negev. So you got about 50% of that little tiny red sliver that is the modern state of Israel. Put that in context in the United States, and I tried to situate it somewhere around Missouri, Iowa, kind of right there in the middle, and that's what we're talking about in terms of just land mass, the land of the United States, the borders of the United States versus the borders of the modern state of Israel. And again, you have to take away about 50% of that is not inhabited. To dial in a little bit more tightly, by the way, we do have some 8th grade through 12th grade, I think, with us. Is that right? Are you here, guys? Can I see hands? All right. Thank you for being here. I want to make sure that this is digestible for you guys as well. All right, so here we have Israel in the yellow, right? And then you have some intrusions there that are in green. And so I'll use my pointer on the computer. Here we are talking about the Gaza Strip, and this is where the conflict originated, the current conflict. And then you have what is called the West Bank, this area here that's in green with yellow stripes. And then you have what is called the Golan Heights in the far north of Israel, adjacent to or used to be controlled by the modern state of Syria. All right, so you understand geographically what we're talking about, right? This is Tel Aviv, right here. We were staying 20 miles north in Netanya, which is where my pointer is here. And Gaza is approximately 54 miles from the airport, which is right here. And then another 20 miles, 22 miles to Netanya, if you form a little kind of weird-looking triangle. Here's another look at the same thing, just giving you different opportunities to kind of integrate this. We've got Gaza Strip down here to the southwest. We've got the West Bank kind of right in the heart of modern Israel today. And then not marked on this map is Golan Heights in the upper right corner of this map. This is a picture of what the Ottoman Empire looked like at the end of World War I. And you go, oh my goodness, that was back in the day. Yeah, but it directly affects how we understand realities in the Middle East today. The Ottoman Empire, they were in Turkey, which is here. They were originated in Turkey, and then Turkey, as a Muslim, predominantly Muslim country, turned itself into an empire by conquest. And so what you see in the colored areas, all the different color, that's all part of the Ottoman Empire, from northern Africa all the way to the Persian Gulf, and including the areas of Eastern Europe, what you would call Macedonia in biblical New Testament times. All of that is part of the Ottoman Empire. It was massive. It was gigantic. They made a tactical error in allying with the Germans in World War I and lost. And so they lost their empire, and Turkey shrunk from controlling most of what we call the Middle East today to this area that is in light purple. That makes sense? Jerusalem and Israel, in this area on the east end of the Mediterranean, was a part of the Turkish Empire. And when Turkey lost, along with Germany, lost to the Allies in World War I, they lost their empire and they lost control of the land of what we call the modern state of Israel. So until 1920 and before 1920, before World War I, and all the way back into the 14, 15, 1600s, we're talking 400 years plus ago, these guys, the Ottoman Empire, Ottoman Turks, were ruling the land of Israel as a Muslim entity. Israel was not called Israel. Israel was not called Palestine during this time. There is no ancient Palestine. It doesn't exist. This is the area is called the Sanjak of Jerusalem, the Sanjak of Nablus, and the Sanjak of Akka, which is biblical Akko. Or in New Testament times, Paul's journeys, etc., Book of Acts, it's called Ptolemais. But these are the three different divisions that this land that we now call Israel was divided up into in the days of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. Now let's take a look at what happened after World War I. The League of Nations that eventually morphed into what we call you can fill in the blank, guys, come on. United Nations, thank you very much. They get by with a little help from my friends here, guys. The rest of y'all are just kind of just invitees to the party. All right, these are the honored guests. All right, so the land of Israel, the land of the Middle East, Eastern Mediterranean, was divided up after World War I by the League of Nations into mandate sections. The French mandate and the British mandate. So let's take a look at this map right here, because I think it's just a little bit clearer. So you have Syria and Iraq, or rather Syria and Lebanon, that are French. They're part of the French mandate. And the British mandate included a chunk of land that was called Palestine. They resurrected an old name that was used back in Roman times and even in Greek literature. We get this word Palestine. It comes from the word Philistine originally. You get the connection? Philistine, Palestine, all right? So This was not called that. You just looked at the map and you saw that it was the Sanjak of Jerusalem, Nablus, and Acca, or Acco, or Ptolemais. So now we have a mandate by the League of Nations on the part of the British to take control of and to administrate what we call today Israel and the modern-day Kingdom of Jordan. Everybody okay with this? This is in the time period of the 1920 was when it got on paper. 1923 was when there was actual implementation of the British and French mandates. And this lasted all the way until 1948. Okay, 1948. So the first plan for partition between Jews and Arabs, because Jews and Arabs were already fighting each other before the British Mandate period and during the British Mandate period. So please understand that there is no modern independent nation of Israel. So they are not fighting about Israel has our land. They're fighting a war that most recently Hamas has declared this is not a war about politics. This is not a war about territory. This is a war of, can you guys fill in that blank? There's only one thing left on the table. This is a war of religion. That's what Hamas said. You don't have to believe me. That's what at least one of the players in the modern conflict has come to the table. Its leadership has said, this is a war about faith. Okay? So this was the first plan that the British came up with to divide their mandate into areas that Arabs could have their area and Jews could have their area. I'm using religious terms now, Arabs and Jews, because according to the most recent statements by Hamas, this is a religious conflict. Okay? So we're going with that. The plan was to give the west side, do you see the Jordan River there? Jordan River that feeds the Dead Sea, that also feeds the Sea of Galilee there. It's a border between the Jewish side, according to the first plan of the British Mandate, and on the east side of the Jordan, this area was supposed to be given to Arabs. Well, it eventually became Israel on the west side of the Jordan and the modern-day Kingdom of Jordan on the east side of the Jordan. But this was the original plan. They didn't know how this was going to shake out into Israel and Jordan today. This was the original plan, to divide right down the middle using the Jordan River basically as the dividing line of Israel, Jews on the west, Arabs on the east. Nobody seemed to like that. It didn't go anywhere. So, with the beginning of this plan for the British Mandate period, the ruling power was the British Empire. We're going back to the 1920s and just after World War I. The territory, they named it Palestine. All of the citizens, guys, are you hearing me? A-L-L, all of the citizens of the left-hand side, the west-hand side, were called Palestinians. I have friends that I work with on a regular basis. They are native-born, Hebrew-speaking Israeli Jews, and their parents and grandparents have the green cards issued by the British Mandate that are in Hebrew. And when it comes to the point on that ID card that says religion, it says Yehudi, Jewish. Okay? So Jewish Palestinians, I see the quizzical looks already. Let's see, we're only into this about 10 minutes, but they're already there. This is the reality that we're looking at. In British Mandate period Palestine, everybody who lived there, they were all Palestinians in British eyes, whether they are Jewish or whether they are Arab. If you are confused, you should be, because this is confusing, especially when we're looking at it through 21st century, 1923 eyes, where there's a very clear distinction between Palestinians or Arabs, Palestinians are Muslims. They still aren't all Muslims. Some of them are Druze, some of them are Christian, some of them are Baha'i, some of them are nothing, secular. But That's the kind of world that we're dealing with when we're trying to get our heads around the modern reality of what we call the Middle East. All right, all citizens are Jews. Jewish Arab immigration, there's still people pouring into this country because it's relatively sparsely inhabited. People are looking for a place to make a better life for their kids, for their families. The Arab side opposed all Jewish immigration, and they approached the British Mandate leadership and they said, we want you to stop, we want you to block all Jewish immigration. This should be our land. We're still not talking about Israel. There is no Israel. This is British Mandate, quote, Palestine. There's no such thing and hasn't been such thing as an Israel for 2,000 years. So this is not about statehood. It's not about politics. This is, again, an issue of religion. We want you to stop all these Jews from Eastern Europe that are pouring into this country because we want control of this country. What is the issue? The issue is a doctrine that goes all the way back practically to the Prophet Muhammad himself, and that is any territory, any land that has once been controlled by, ruled by Muslims, should always be ruled by Muslims. Now, this is not a matter of debate, but I don't want you to take it on my authority either. There's this wonderful thing called the internet. Please feel free to make use of it. Wikipedia is becoming a pretty decent source for this, and they're telling us this. This is not something that's been hidden in a closet. Shouldn't be something that I'm telling you brand new today right now, but please feel free to check me on this. I would love if you fact check that, because that is the way that we learn. That's the way we own our own personal positions. Okay, so Arabs are opposing all Jewish immigration, and because the British were not willing to stop all Jewish immigration, then the Arab and Jewish conflict, or largely Muslim and Jewish conflict, continued. We're on into the 1920s now. The second solution that was offered in terms of dividing up land and putting people in specific locations is called the British solution, the Peel Commission. And this is 1937. You can see it on the map here. And the conclusion that the Peel Commission came to was, we're going to give the Jews much of what is called Galilee and some down the northern coast. The rest of the territory, this area that is in light yellow, we're going to give to the Arab population. So it was a 20-80 split at that point, but this was rejected by the Arab component of the population of the British Mandate Palestine, because they didn't want 80%, they wanted 100%. Why would that be? We just talked about it. Now you tell me, why would they insist, they would reject the Peel Commission plan of 1937, and instead of accepting 80%, without war, without any negotiations, anything, it's just not having to give up anything, we're going to just take 80% and run. We're going to take the shekels, I guess it was lira or something like that, and the pound, and we're going to run. It didn't happen because they wanted what? 100%. Okay. Oh yeah, I cheated and put the answer down there. Sorry. Third British option, solution. It's called the Woodhead Commission, and this is happening in 1938. The Peel Plan failed in 37, so we're back to the table in 1938. Back to the drawing board. The Woodhead Commission suggested that Jews get 18%. In other words, their chunk of the pie is shrinking as we get closer and closer to our time period. So now instead of 20, they're only going to get about 18. Arabs are going to get 82, and this is what the map looks like. Much smaller area in Galilee, and then this big chunk in yellow that is ceded to the Arab population. The middle is that gray area is supposed to remain international, and that seems to be a consistent theme in these different British iterations of what this land should look like once the Brits are are gone. Should be an international zone. It includes basically Jerusalem and Bethlehem. This was rejected by Arabs, and the reason was that they wanted 100% of the land. Question for you. Do you see some themes developing? Okay, let's continue. The fourth plan, which is called the Anglo-American Committee. By this time, we're talking 1945. World War II is now over. Britain and England and the United States are now have been allied in the war, and Britain wants to ally them as being a part of the solution of this Jewish-Arab growing problem, because immigration continues on both sides, especially on the Jewish side, because you have all of those refugees, all of those immigrants who have survived the Holocaust, who have survived World War II and German control of most of Europe, and they are pouring into the ports of this country. So it is similar to the Peel and the Woodhead proposals, although the gray area is a little bit bigger and stretched out, looks kind of like a banana. This is going to include all the way to the sea, and it's going to include all the way down to the inn of the Good Samaritan down in the Judean wilderness, this little finger, part of the finger there. More territory was set aside for Jews in this area. You'll see that the dark yellow has increased here, and it was in preparation for this continued immigration that they expected as a result of World War II and the end of World War II. This was rejected by both sides, and the documentation is poor on this, and I'm not 100% why Jews were not able. They were always accepting the previous plans. Here they were getting more, and I don't really understand that, but maybe that's a reason why I'm going to have to come back again later. But it was rejected by both sides. A fifth proposal then, and now we're talking about the development of the United Nations, and the United Nations came up with a plan that is called the UN Partition Plan. Anybody ever heard of that before? The UN Partition Plan. That's the one we hear the most about. Never heard of Peel, never heard of Anglo-American, never heard of Woodhead, et cetera, but now we're starting to get to more recent history, and I know that most of you guys have heard of the UN Partition Plan. They still talk about it on TV today. Keep your ears open, because you're going to hear this kind of stuff, especially from this point on. Here, Jews are going to get 56% of the land. That's a much bigger chunk. Arabs are going to get 43%, and then you have a little tiny international zone that basically just includes Jerusalem, and this little finger on the south includes Bethlehem. Do you know that Jerusalem and Bethlehem were that close to each other? Yes or no? Okay. Did you know that they're within eyesight of one another? Did you know that they're about 6 miles apart, but both are growing, and so eventually it's going to be sort of like, I don't know, like Urbandale and Des Moines. You can't tell where when you cross the border in places. All right, so I didn't mean to hurt anybody's feelings on that point. Jews accepted the UN partition plan. The Arabs rejected. Then we're back to that theme of Jewish acceptance, Arab rejection, and the escalation and fighting continued upward. The War of Independence. The War of Independence now. So, 1947, the UN partition plan. The British are evacuating. They're leaving. They're basically saying, we've spent all of our money. We've spent all of the blood that we're going to spend trying to keep you guys apart, and we're leaving. And, hey, good luck and God bless you. And so 1947, the drawdown started. 1948, it was complete. And in 1948, Israel declared its independence. Now we can talk about Israel. You can't talk about an Israel before 1948, but the leadership of the Jewish community declared an independent state in 1948. And at the moment that the Brits were last soldiers getting on the boat to go back home, and the Jews declared an independent state that they called Israel, then Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, and Arabs living within the borders of Israel attacked Israel. We call this the War of Independence. It lasted 2 years. There was an armistice that was not a treaty, but an armistice that was signed in 49, and it basically set in stone, or the word I used is formalized, the borders that we call the pre-67 borders of Israel. That's going to be different than what happens in 67, which we haven't gotten to yet, right? So this is sort of sets into almost like international law, at least in certain people's minds. These are what the borders should be. So let's talk about this real quick. The biggest chunk is the orange stuff, or whatever that color is, and that's Israel as at the end of the War of Independence, 1949. Egypt had conquered the blue area that today we call the Gaza Strip. Egypt called it the Protectorate of Gaza. Protectorate of Gaza. Egypt then decided that it would not annex, thank you, Pastor Austin, that they would not annex formally Gaza into Egypt. Why would that be? Because they didn't want Gazans to be citizens of Egypt. They didn't want them voting. They didn't want them serving in the Egyptian army, etc., etc., etc. They didn't want to grant the full benefits of citizenship to this approximately 1 million people living in the Gaza Strip. Now it's about 2.5 million living in what is called the Gaza Strip. The green area is what is called the West Bank. Why is it called the West Bank? Because it's west of the banks of the Jordan River. It was conquered during the War of Independence by the Kingdom of Jordan to the east. And the Kingdom of Jordan decided that it would not annex the West Bank. Actually, it did. It didn't initially, but in 1950, Jordan illegally annexed the West Bank. Why is that? Because it wasn't given to them by the UN partition plan, and because the international law says that you are not, if you are an aggressor and you conquer territory, then you cannot annex that territory. Example, modern day example. Has anyone ever heard of Crimea? Okay, that was illegally. It was first conquered, then occupied, and illegally annexed by Russia. It's still not recognized by international law. So we have very interesting parallels even in our day, in our lifetime. We're experiencing these same kind of things. So Jordan annexed in 1950 the West Bank, but illegally so. Fast forward to 1988. Can I just a real quick aside? In 1988, Jordan relinquished all territorial claims on the West Bank. 1988, King Hussein of Jordan said, international broadcast, we relinquish all claims to the land, the territory that is called the West Bank. So now this West Bank is sort of, kind of, by international law, it's a free agent. It's played out its contract. It can jump leagues, right? Michael Jordan, free agency, whatever, right? So also a part of the 1949 armistice is that the Golan Heights up here continued in control of Syria. And Syria from 1949 to 1967 used the 4,100 feet above sea level, looking down on the Sea of Galilee and Galilee proper, to be able to shell settlements, Jewish settlements, near the border, close enough to be able to be reached by artillery. So the armistice formalized pre-67 borders. Israel is controlling, and you've got these various entities: Egypt with Gaza, Jordan with the West Bank, and what we call today the Golan Heights remained in control of Syria. Now let's move to 1964. The Palestine Liberation Organization, initialed PLO. You've heard of PLO, right? The PLO was formed in 1964 at the Intercontinental Hotel, the Seven Arches Hotel on the Mount of Olives, just outside of Jerusalem. They had one primary goal, and the goal was the complete annihilation of the modern state of Israel. There were no other real aspirations. That was the primary purpose of the formation of the PLO. 6-Day War, 1967. So we had the War of Independence, 48 to 49, right? Now, the next major war, there were others in between, but the next major war is what is called the Six-Day War. My Israeli friends like to chuckle a little bit and say it actually was part into the seventh day, but six sounds better, so we call it the Six-Day War. All right, the functionaries there are Israel in a defensive position, and Egypt, Jordan, and Syria are attacking Israel. Israel takes the Golan Heights from Syria, takes the West Bank from Jordan, and takes the Gaza Strip from Egypt. Okay? These are then called, under international law, spoils of war. Why? Because Israel is the aggrieved party. Israel is the party that is the passive. It is the aggressors in the matter are Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, all of which lost territory to the modern state of Israel. Interestingly, though, the next year, I think it was 1968, these are either late 67, same year, or early 68, the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, voted to return the Sinai, all of this area here, the Sinai to all of this area here, to Egypt. And to return the Golan to Syria. But it was never implemented. The prime minister nixed it, kind of like a veto, and that was never implemented. At the Khartoum Arab Summit, they rejected peace and refused to issue a statement recognizing Israel's right to exist as a nation, the Jewish people to have its homeland as in the UN Charter and the Balfour Declaration. International law. Any territory that is captured when in defense against aggression may be retained as one's own until and unless a subsequent legally recognized peace treaty is signed, both sides agreeing that stipulates the return of that particular piece of property. That didn't happen, by the way. Yom Kippur Wars, the next major war, 1973. And there, on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, Egypt and Syria attacked Israel. There were other participants that were lesser players in this. I list them there: Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, Sudan, Morocco, Algiers, Kuwait, etc., that either provided funding or munitions or soldiers or all three of the above. So that's that second group. Ultimately, though, the Israelis, even though they initially lost territory, they regained it and they pushed all the way to Damascus, the capital of Syria. And there was a ceasefire and armistice signed, and the borders went back to normal. 1978, any of you guys remember the Camp David? Remember Anwar Sadat and Jimmy Carter and Menachem Begin on the right? And they were able to establish, in return for returning the Sinai, they did that this time, 1978, they gave the Sinai back to Egypt and were able to sign the first peace treaty between the modern state of Israel and an Arab Muslim nation. Starts with Egypt in 1978. 1987 through 1993, there is an event happens internally within Israel called the First Intifada. The word intifada is an Arabic word, and it means uprising. The first uprising. Not an attack from outside, but a little bit like the summer of 2020 here in the United States. Rioting, stone throwing, burning, etc. And the First Intifada. The problem that they were trying to get recognition for from the international community largely was their claim of economic and their claim of social oppression. And this led to what is called the Oslo Accords. Oslo is a city in Norway. Norway sponsored, hosted a series of peace talks between Israelis and what are now called Palestinians, and that term has shrunk to include Arabs without citizenship in modern Israel. It was a choice. You know that there are hundreds of thousands of Arabs who live within the modern state of Israel who have full citizenship, right? You're aware of that. Arabs who are Christians, Arabs who are Druze, Arabs who are Muslim, and they have full citizenship, serve in the army, pay taxes, vote, have members that serve in the Knesset that are able to vote when the national parliament convenes, and to bring their issues before and to make alliances and the whole business, much like our political system works in the United States. I give you one example. The city of Nazareth, approximately 220,000, all Arabs, and they all have Israeli citizenship. They chose that, basically. Palestinians that do not have citizenship have chosen to not involve themselves in the body politic of the nation of Israel. So this 1987 to 1993 and the Oslo Accords, the Oslo talks began, first Oslo I, in 1993. In the meantime, in 1988, I mentioned it to you already, Jordan relinquished all territorial claims to the West Bank. We don't want it. We're not interested in ruling there. We're not going to press our claims either locally or internationally. We are out of we're tapping out, dealing ourselves out of the picture. All claims to the West Bank. 1993, now we're back on Oslo. Oslo I takes place, and you have several things that are accomplished with Oslo. First of all, there's peace between Israel and Jordan, and maybe you remember this in 1994, where you have King Hussein of Jordan, Bill Clinton of the United States, and Yitzhak Rabin, who was assassinated 2 years later, not by a Palestinian, but by a fellow Israeli, for making peace. So there are difficulties on both sides here. But these guys signed the peace accord, and now we have peace between Israel and a second Arab, predominantly Muslim neighbor, and that is the modern-day Kingdom of Jordan. The PLO becomes recognized as a result of Oslo I as a legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. And so PLO morphed into the Palestine National Association, which then became or authority, and then that morphed into the Palestinian Authority, the PA. And that's the way we refer to that ruling group of people today. The Letter of Mutual Recognition was an important document where, for the first time, you have Arabs living within Israel who are not a part of Israel, but they are the PLO, recognizing Israel's right to exist as a nation. And Israel's recognition of the PLO that then becomes the PNA, that then becomes the PA, as the legitimate representatives of Palestinians who are, of Arabs who have chosen to not be Israeli citizens. Okay, so letter of mutual recognition. Also, territorial concessions. Jericho, Bethlehem, and the Gaza Strip are ceded over, given over to the Palestinian Authority. So is there a two-state solution? Is it possible? I would say that it's already a reality. Anybody who's been to Israel, has done enough travel there, see that when you go to Bethlehem, you have to go through a checkpoint, possibly have your passport checked, go through a barrier, a wall. At certain points, the security fence is a wall. Sometimes it's a fence, and sometimes it's just a spool of Constantine wire. Varies from place to place. But you have Bethlehem, Jordan, or Jericho, and the Gaza Strip given over to the PA. But Hamas in the Gaza Strip refers to this as Oslo I, as a treaty between infidels and infidels, Jews and the Palestinian Authority that has made an agreement with Israel. So that's kind of helping you to sort of understand where this particular group, Hamas, a splinter group of the Muslim Brotherhood, has positioned itself it's kind of painted themselves into a corner that they only have one response to Israel, and that is from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They're back to the 100% requirement. In 1995, and I'm almost out of time, 95 to 2000, we have the Oslo II, and the offer was to give back 100% of the Gaza Strip, give back 92% of the West Bank, and this was offered to the Palestinian Authority, but the PA rejected that under, again, Arafat. This is Ehud Barak, and again, Bill Clinton. He's kind of like me, he keeps showing up. And so then the PA rejected the offer, and as a result, the talks in Oslo II broke down, and Yasser Arafat, this gentleman in the military garb here with the keffiyeh, he launches the second intifada. What did intifada mean? You guys have good memories. Uprising, exactly. The second uprising, internal within Israel. So, as a result of bombed pizzerias and bus stops and buses and synagogues and the like, the security fence, quote unquote, was begun in 2002, and you see that here in the red. And this is not a map of Israel, this is a map of the area around Jerusalem. Okay, so the security fence. Would it be politically incorrect if I quoted Benjamin Netanyahu? Bibi Netanyahu? He said, you can say what you want to, apartheid, whatever, about the fence, but it worked. The bombing stopped. So it's a functional thing, not necessarily a religious thing to him, or even a nationality, ethnic thing. 2005, Israel decides in 2005 that it's going to completely withdraw from the Gaza Strip. Why? There are no peace talks going on. There's no Oslo III taking place. They just decide, you know what, we're done. And not only did they dismantle all of their military fortifications, get rid of all of the soldiers that were there, they had to forcibly remove 9,000 plus Jewish settlers living in 25 different settlements inside the Gaza Strip and remove them over into Israel proper. You may have seen the newsreels on this. I recall there were like riots and pushing and shoving, Jew on Jew, because this is my land. We bought this. We've been paying taxes on this. We raise our children here. We raise our crops here. We manufacture our goods here, et cetera, et cetera. We don't want to leave. This is our home. And yet they were forced to leave the Gaza Strip by the Israeli authorities. And in so doing, in this unilateral withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, Israel then paved the way for the rise to power of the group called Hamas. In 2007, Hamas was elected to rule the Gaza Strip. There was a bloody purge of everybody that opposed them, including their own PA, their own Arab, their own leadership. You may have seen videos online of them lining up 20 plus people at a time, hands behind the back, on the knees, and execution style killed because they were not Hamas. Instead, they were Palestinian Authority. They were Fatah. They were part of Yasser Arafat's group, not a part of the Palestinian group called Hamas. Israeli wars with Hamas from 2008 to 2009. It only took 1 year. They came into power in 2007, and they're at war for 2 years with Israel. The next war was 2012. The next war was 2014. Seems like it comes along about every couple of years, right? 2021, and then again 2 years later, we're right here in 2023. So I hope that these things help you to intelligently watch news broadcasts, read the reports in newspapers, and help you to think through what is going on in this really complex world that we call the Middle East. A lot of history, a lot of water under the bridge, but I hope that this is an even-handed way of helping you to navigate those deep waters. And I trust that this is going to empower you to have more fruitful discussions with friends and neighbors, co-workers, over the coffee table at dinner with your own spouse and family, because knowledge is power. And the truth ultimately does what? Set you free. We want you free. God bless you guys.
Hey. Go on, close to the hymn on your microphone. So let me just mention. He's going to be here tonight. We're going to have very little music. We're going to have a baptism right away, and then he's going to teach. Whatever he didn't finish here, he'll pick up. But you guys need to come back, okay? Also, Dr. Nunnally and Lacey were in Israel when this happened, and so a lot of their income is leading trips there, and they had several trips canceled and will be canceled. So tonight you'll have an opportunity to bless the Nunnallys with an offering. And God bless you. Thank you for being here, and pray for the peace over there.
Amen.
Both for the Palestinian innocents and the Israel innocents. Pray for the peace of Israel. Pray.
Amen.
God bless you. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you back tonight, 6 o'clock. Amen. Thank you.